The waiter approaching Madonna's table at Cipriani downtown in New York City was trying very hard not to make eye contact. His hands were shaking slightly as he set down the water glasses, and he kept his face angled away from her, focusing intently on the task of perfectly positioning the silverware that was already perfectly positioned. Madonna noticed. She always noticed when people were trying to hide from her. But there was something different about this particular waiter. Something in the way he moved, the way he held his shoulders, the nervous energy that wasn't the usual starstruck fan reaction. This was something else. This was recognition mixed with something that looked a lot like shame. She looked at his face more carefully, and then she felt her breath catch in her throat. "Danny?" she said quietly. The waiter's hands froze over the breadbasket. For a moment, he stood completely still, and Madonna could see him making a decision. Then he straightened up, forced a professional smile, and said in a carefully neutral voice, "Good evening. My name is Daniel, and I'll be your server tonight. Can I start you off with something to drink?" Madonna stared at him. "Danny Coleman, it's you." The professional mask slipped. His eyes finally met hers, and she saw everything in that look. Recognition, embarrassment, a desperate plea for her to please just let this go. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I think you have me confused with someone else." "Ma'am?" Madonna said, and despite the seriousness of the moment, she almost laughed. "Danny, we shared a basement apartment in the East Village in 1982. We wrote songs together on that broken Casio keyboard. We ate ramen noodles for dinner every night for 6 months because it was all we could afford. Don't you dare ma'am me." Danny's professional composure crumbled. His shoulders sagged, and he looked down at the breadbasket in his hands, like he wasn't sure how it had gotten there. "Yeah," he said quietly, "it's me." The restaurant was upscale and busy, filled with well-dressed people having expensive conversations. This wasn't the place for a reunion between a global superstar and a struggling waiter who used to be her creative partner. But Madonna didn't care about that. "Sit down," she said. "I can't, I'm working, I'll get fired." "Then take a break. Tell them you need 5 minutes." "Madonna, Danny." Her voice was gentle but firm. "Sit down, please." He looked around nervously, caught the eye of the floor manager, and mumbled something about taking his break. Then he sat down across from Madonna, still not quite looking at her, holding his water tray like a shield. "How long have you been working here?" Madonna asked. 3 years. Almost 4. "And before that?" Danny shrugged. "Different restaurants, some catering. A stint as a hotel concierge. Whatever paid the bills." Madonna felt something tighten in her chest. "Are you still writing music?" The question seemed to hurt him physically. He flinched. "Madonna, don't." "Don't what?" "Don't do this. Don't sit here and—" He stopped, trying to collect himself. "Look, I'm happy for you. I am. Everything you've achieved, everything you've become, I'm proud of you. But please don't make me talk about what I didn't become." "What happened?" Madonna asked. "After I got my record deal, after everything started happening, I tried to find you. I wanted to bring you with me. You just disappeared." Danny was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I watched you audition for everyone who mattered. I watched you get rejected 100 times and get back up every single time. And I watched myself give up after rejection number 5. You had something I didn't have, Madonna. You had this inability to accept defeat. I had talent, maybe, but I didn't have your fire." "So you just quit?" "I got scared. Every time we'd go to a showcase, every time we'd try to get someone to listen to our demos, I could feel myself getting smaller. You got bigger. You became more sure of yourself, more fearless, and I just faded." Madonna reached across the table and took his hand. He looked shocked by the gesture, but he didn't pull away. "I needed you back then," she said. "Those songs we wrote together in that basement, some of my best early work came from those sessions. You understood melody in a way I didn't. You could hear harmonies that I couldn't imagine. That was 40 years ago, Danny said. I'm not that person anymore. Are you still writing? He didn't answer, which was an answer in itself. Danny, are you still writing music? It doesn't matter if I am. Before he could respond, the floor manager appeared at the table, looking concerned. Daniel, your break ended 10 minutes ago. We need you back on the floor. Danny stood up quickly, the professional waiter mask sliding back into place. I'm sorry, I have to. As he turned to leave, a small notebook fell out of his waiter's apron pocket and landed on the floor by Madonna's feet. Danny didn't notice. He was already walking away, heading toward another table that was waving for service. Madonna picked up the notebook. It was worn, the edges soft from being carried in a pocket for what looked like years. She knew she shouldn't look. It was private. But she opened it anyway. What she saw made her heart stop. The notebook was filled with lyrics. Not just lyrics, complete songs, with chord progressions noted, melody lines sketched out, harmonic structures mapped. Page after page of work that was raw and real and absolutely brilliant. Madonna started reading. The first song was called Invisible Years. It was about being in the shadow of someone else's success, about loving someone and resenting them at the same time, about the what-ifs that haunt you when you watch someone else live the dream you once shared. The second song was Basement Sessions. It was a memory of those nights in 1982, written with such specific detail that Madonna could smell the mold in that apartment, could feel the broken heater that never worked, could hear the sirens outside the window, while they huddled around that Casio keyboard, making magic out of nothing. The third song was called She Became a Star, and it was about her. Madonna read every word, and by the end of the third verse, she was crying. It was the most honest, beautiful, heartbreaking song she'd read in years. It captured everything: the jealousy and the pride, the resentment and the genuine happiness for her success, the mourning for a friendship that got lost somewhere between then and now. She looked up and saw Danny across the restaurant, taking an order from a table of businessmen who probably didn't even look at his face. And she made a decision. When Danny's shift ended 3 hours later, Madonna was still there. She'd moved to the bar, ordered a coffee she didn't drink, and waited. The restaurant manager had tried to get her to take a more private table, clearly concerned about having such a high-profile customer sitting at the bar for hours, but she'd refused. When Danny emerged from the back, now in street clothes, he stopped dead when he saw her. "Your notebook," Madonna said, holding it up. "You dropped it." Danny's face went pale. "Did you?" "I read it. Every page." "Madonna, I'm sorry. Those songs, they're incredible," Madonna interrupted. "They're some of the best songs I've read in 10 years. Danny stood there, frozen, clearly not knowing how to respond. "Why are you waiting tables?" Madonna asked. "You should be producing, writing for other artists, creating." "I'm 59 years old," Danny said. "The music industry doesn't want 59-year-old waiters with dreams. That ship sailed 40 years ago." "What if I told you that ship is pulling back into port right now?" Danny shook his head. "I don't want your charity, Madonna." "This isn't charity. This is business." She stood up and walked over to him. "I'm recording a new album. I've been working with the same producers, the same writers, and everything sounds polished, perfect, dead. I need something real, something that has actual emotion in it." She held up the notebook. "Invisible Years is going on my album, if you'll let me record it. And I want you in a studio with me, not as a favor, as a collaborator." "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. And before you say no, before you tell me all the reasons why this can't work, I want you to know something." Madonna's voice got quiet. "I've spent 40 years chasing bigger stages, bigger tours, bigger everything. And somewhere in all that bigness, I lost something. I lost the feeling of making music with someone who understood what I was trying to say before I even said it. You were that person, Danny. Maybe you still are." Danny was crying now, not even trying to hide it. "I gave up. I watched you succeed, and I gave up. So don't give up now. Come make music with me. Let's see if we can find that thing we had in the basement. But this time, let's both get to enjoy it." What happened over the next 6 months became one of those stories the music industry whispers about with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. Danny Coleman walked into Germano's studios in Manhattan 2 days after that conversation at Cipriani, carrying his worn notebook and 40 years of accumulated doubt. Madonna was already there, and she'd assembled a stripped-down team. Just a sound engineer, a session guitarist, and a piano player. "No producers," she told Danny. "No label executives. No one telling us what will or won't work. Just us, like it used to be." They started with "Invisible Years." Danny was nervous, his hands shaking as he showed Madonna the chord progression on the piano. But the moment they started working together, something clicked. It was like muscle memory. The way they developed a shorthand in that basement 40 years ago came flooding back. Madonna would sing a melody, and Danny would immediately know what harmony it needed. Danny would suggest a chord change, and Madonna would understand exactly why it worked. The song they recorded that day was raw and real in a way that Madonna's recent work hadn't been. You could hear the years in it, the regret and the hope and the bittersweet acknowledgement that life doesn't always go according to plan. When they played it back, both of them were crying. "That's it," Madonna said. "That's what I've been missing." Over the next 4 months, they worked on 7 more songs together. Some were from Danny's notebook. Some they wrote from scratch in the studio. All of them had that same quality. The honesty that comes when you're working with someone who knew you before you became who you are now. The album was called Basement Sessions, a direct reference to where it all started. The label was nervous. Madonna's fans were confused. This wasn't the dance pop they expected. This was something quieter, more introspective, more grown-up. The first single, Invisible Years, dropped without massive promotion, without a flashy video. Just the song and a simple note from Madonna. "This was written by Danny Coleman, who I used to make music with when we were kids with nothing but dreams. He's been invisible for too long. Listen." The song went to #1 in 17 countries. Danny Coleman became, at age 59, an overnight success. Suddenly, everyone wanted to work with him. Artists who'd never heard of him were calling, asking if he had more songs like that. Music critics who dismissed Madonna's recent work were calling Basement Sessions a masterpiece, a return to form, proof that real artistry doesn't have an expiration date. But the real story, the one that mattered more than the charts or the reviews, happened 6 months after the album dropped. Danny and Madonna were back at Cipriani downtown, sitting at the same table where this all started. This time, Danny wasn't wearing a waiter's uniform. He was wearing jeans and a comfortable sweater, and he had a confidence about him that hadn't been there before. "I went back to the basement apartment," Danny said. "The building's still there. Different people living in it now, obviously. But I stood outside, and I remembered us in there, huddled around that keyboard, convinced we were going to change the world." "We did change the world," Madonna said, "just not in the timeline we expected." "You changed the world. I served people pasta. You wrote songs that millions of people connected with. You just needed the right moment to share them." Madonna reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry it took me 40 years to find you again. I should have tried harder." "I was hiding," Danny said. "You can't find someone who's hiding from themselves." The waiter, a different waiter, brought their food, and there was a moment of irony that neither of them missed. 6 months ago, Danny had been on the other side of this exchange. "What are you going to do now?" Madonna asked. "You've got offers from every label in the business." Danny smiled. "I'm producing an album for a kid I met in Brooklyn. She's 22, works at a coffee shop, writes songs in notebooks she carries everywhere. Reminds me of someone." Madonna laughed. You're going to give her the chance someone should have given you. 40 years late, but she gave it to me. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then Madonna said, I have a confession. That night when I saw you here, when you were trying to pretend you didn't know me, I almost let it go. I almost just ordered my meal and left. It would have been easier for both of us. Why didn't you? Because I looked at you and I saw something I recognized. Not the waiter, not the guy who gave up. I saw the kid in the basement who could hear melodies that didn't exist yet. And I thought, what if that kid is still in there? What if he just needs someone to remember he exists? Danny's eyes filled with tears. Thank you for remembering. Thank you for still being there. 6 months later, at the Grammy Awards, Invisible Years won Song of the Year. Danny Coleman stood on that stage at 59 years old, holding a Grammy, looking out at an industry that had ignored him for 40 years. This is for everyone who gave up too early, he said in his acceptance speech. It's never too late. And if you're out there right now working a job you hate, carrying dreams you think died years ago, they're not dead. They're just waiting. Sometimes all it takes is one person who remembers who you used to be and refuses to let you forget. Madonna was in the audience, crying. After the ceremony, a reporter asked her what it felt like to resurrect Danny's career. I didn't resurrect anything, Madonna said. He was never dead. He was just invisible. All I did was remind the world to look. Today, Danny Coleman is one of the most sought-after songwriters and producers in the industry. He's worked with Billie Eilish, Olivia Rodrigo, and a dozen other artists who appreciate songs that prioritize emotion over production. He's won 5 Grammys, been inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame, and become a mentor to young artists who are struggling with self-doubt. But if you ask him about his success, he always tells the same story. The story of working as a waiter at Cipriani downtown. The story of the Drops notebook. The story of a friend who refused to let 40 years of silence be the end of their story. I spent most of my life invisible, he says. And then Madonna saw me, really saw me, not the waiter, not the failure, the person I used to be and could still become. That's the greatest gift anyone can give another person, the gift of being seen. There's a photo that hangs in Danny's home studio. It's from 1982, taken in that basement apartment. Madonna and Danny are sitting on a broken couch, the Casio keyboard on their laps, both of them grinning at the camera like they knew something the rest of the world didn't know yet. Next to that photo is a newer one. Madonna and Danny at Germano Studios, 40 years later, sitting at a piano, working on Invisible Years. The grin is the same. Only now, they're both old enough to appreciate it. Between those 2 photos is the caption Danny wrote. It's never too late to become who you were meant to be. Sometimes, you just need someone who remembers. If you've ever given up on a dream, if you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever wondered what would have happened if you just tried one more time, this story is for you. Share it with someone who needs to remember that it's not over until they decide it's over. Subscribe for more stories about second chances, about friendships that survive everything, and about the power of being seen. And if you're carrying dreams in a notebook somewhere, don't wait 40 years. Start now, because you never know when someone might be ready to see you.